He was a dying billionaire who refused every treatment until a strict, beautiful doctor risked everything, and what happened next left everyone speechless. Stay tuned because you are about to watch a beautiful story and find out what happened next. Hello, family. Welcome to Tales Haven. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. Richard Coleman had everything people dreamed of: money, power, respect. His name was printed on newspapers, his companies filled the skyline, and the world looked at him as a man who could never fall. Yet, behind the tall glass walls of his mansion, Richard was a broken man. 3 years ago, tragedy had stolen his joy. His wife, Margaret, the love of his youth, had died suddenly in a car accident on a rainy night. Since then, his life had lost all color. The once proud, sharp-eyed billionaire now moved like a shadow in his own home. At first, he tried to continue living as if nothing had changed. He showed up at board meetings, signed deals, and spoke to investors. But slowly, his body began to betray him. Sleepless nights turned into constant headaches. His heart grew weaker. His coughs came more often. His doctors prescribed medicines, begged him to rest, even suggested surgery. But Richard refused everything. "I don't care what happens to me," he muttered one night as he sat in front of the fireplace, his face lit by the flames, his hands shaking slightly from weakness. "If life could take her from me, then what's left worth saving?" His staff tried to encourage him. His assistant James pleaded many times, "Sir, your companies need you. People depend on you. Please take the treatment." But Richard's eyes carried the emptiness of a man who had already buried his reason to live. He would wave his hand and whisper, "Enough. I'm done." The mansion, once filled with laughter and dinner parties, had become silent. His piano, where Margaret once played soft melodies, gathered dust. The library where they once read together stood untouched. The garden outside, where roses once bloomed, now grew wild and unkempt. Richard stopped looking at the future. He lived only in memories. Every night, he poured himself a glass of wine and sat by the window, staring at the rain. To him, the rain was the only thing that understood his sorrow. It fell, it broke, and it disappeared into the earth. Even when doctors came to his home, he turned them away. "Go cure someone else," he said bitterly. "My time is done." He was a billionaire, but his wealth was useless against the storm in his heart. The city outside continued to shine, but Richard Coleman had already surrendered, his body sick, his soul weary, his heart convinced there was nothing left to live for. And so, as the days grew darker, everyone feared that soon, the billionaire who once ruled the city would quietly fade away because he had chosen not to fight anymore. But fate had other plans. Early the next morning, James stood at the mansion gate with his phone pressed to his ear. "Please come," he said softly. "He won't listen to anyone." "Text me the address," the voice replied. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Her name was Dr. Emily Carter. A dark sedan stopped by the fountain. A young woman stepped out in a neat white coat over a simple dress. Her hair was pulled back, her eyes calm and sharp. She didn't waste a second on small talk. "Where is he?" she asked. James led her through the quiet halls. Emily noticed the piano covered in dust, the table with untouched medicine, the roses outside left to die. The house was beautiful, but it felt like a museum of memories. They reached the living room. Richard sat in a chair near the fireplace, staring at the flames as if they were the only thing left alive in the room. "Mr. Coleman," James began, "this is—" "I know who she is," Richard said without looking up. "And I don't need her." Emily didn't flinch. She moved closer and placed her bag on the table. "I'm not here for your approval," she said. "I'm here because your heart is failing and your body is tired. If you continue like this, you will not see the end of the year." Richard's eyes lifted, slow and cold. "Get out." "No," Emily replied. The room went still. Even the flames seemed to listen. Emily pulled a small pulse oximeter from her pocket and set it on the table. "I won't touch you without permission." But look at yourself. She pointed, not rudely but firmly. Your hands are shaking. Your breathing is shallow. Your skin is pale. You're weaker than you were last month. Ask your staff, they see it. I said leave, he repeated, voice rougher now. Emily's tone didn't rise. Death doesn't take orders, Mr. Coleman. It doesn't accept bribes. It doesn't care about your money or your pride. It only needs time, and you're giving it all of yours. James held his breath. No one had spoken to Richard like this since Margaret died. Richard stared at her, searching for fear. He found none. He tried something else. How much to never come back? He asked. Everyone has a price. My price, Emily said, is your effort. Pay me with that. Silence. Emily pulled out a slim notebook and sat in the chair across from him. I'll wait. For what? Richard asked. For the moment you decide you're tired of handing your life to grief, she said. When that moment comes, even a small one, I'll begin. He gave a dry laugh. You think I'm some stubborn boy you can scold into obedience? I think you're a man who loved deeply, she answered, her voice softer now, and who believes that living without her is betrayal. It isn't. It's proof that what she gave you was strong. The words struck him like a quiet bell. He looked away quickly, jaw tight. Minutes passed. Emily didn't fill them with talk. She simply sat, listening to the fire, ready. When he coughed, she made a note. When he winced, she made another. She didn't push. She didn't beg. At last, Richard spoke, eyes still on the flames. I don't want to be saved. Emily stood and walked to the piano. With a careful finger, she pressed one key. A single, clear note floated through the room, then faded. You don't have to want it today, she said. You only have to stop pushing it away. She returned to her chair. Here are my rules. I come at 7 every morning. I won't force you, but I also won't lie to you. If you continue to refuse care, I'll document it, and I'll keep showing up anyway. Richard's mouth tightened. You're very sure of yourself. I'm sure of the value of your life, Emily said. And of the people who would break if you're gone. James swallowed hard behind her. Emily closed her notebook and picked up her bag. I'll see you tomorrow. She took 2 steps, then paused. I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Coleman. I can't give you back what you lost, but I can help you keep what you still have. She left the room without waiting for thanks. Richard remained by the fire, staring at the door she had walked through. He told himself she was arrogant. He told himself she would not return. But when the house grew quiet again, he reached for the glass of wine on the table and then stopped. His hand hovered in the air, unsure. For the first time in a long time, the silence did not feel like a friend. It felt like a question. And before dawn the next day, a car rolled up to the gate again, right on time. At 6:59 a.m., the doorbell chimed. James opened the door. Dr. Emily Carter stepped in with her small black bag and the same calm, firm look.
Good morning, she said.
Is he awake? He never really sleeps, James replied. They crossed the quiet hall. The curtains were still drawn. The fire from last night had turned into soft ash. Richard sat in the same chair, in the same position, as if the night had not moved. He glanced at the clock, then at her. You're early, he said. I'm exact, she answered. May I open the curtains? He didn't answer. Emily walked over and pulled the heavy fabric aside. Pale morning light slipped into the room and rested on the piano lid. The dust glowed like a thin cloud. She set her bag down. Today I'm asking for 3 small things. Not medicine. Not surgery. Just 3 minutes of your time. Richard's jaw tightened. Say them. First, a glass of water. She nodded toward the side table. Your hands are dry. Your lips too. He looked at the glass. For a long second, nothing moved. Then he picked it up and took a slow sip. The simplest thing in the world felt like a decision. Second, Emily continued, let me check your oxygen and pulse. It's painless. It takes 10 seconds. You can watch. She held up the small pulse oximeter and waited. Richard's eyes stayed on hers, searching for pressure. He found only patience. He gave a short nod. She clipped the device to his finger. The screen blinked awake. Breathe normally, she said. They both watched the numbers settle. Good, Emily murmured, jotting them down. Not great, but good. What's the third thing? He asked, voice low.
Stand up, she said.
We'll count to 10 together. If you get dizzy, sit back down. I'm here. He stared at the cold fireplace, as if looking for permission from the ashes. Then he placed both hands on the chair arms and pushed. His legs trembled. For a moment he swayed. Emily stepped closer, but she didn't touch him. Not unless he asked. 1, 2, 3, she counted, calm and steady. At 7, his breath shook. At 9, his knee buckled and he sat hard, rubbing his chest. Enough, he muttered. For today, she agreed. And that was brave. He gave a brittle laugh. Brave? I stood for 9 seconds. You stood, she said simply. That matters. She wrote a few notes, then looked up. I'll ask for the same 3 things tomorrow. Add nothing, remove nothing. Your body will learn the rhythm. And if I refuse? I'll ask again tomorrow, she said, closing the notebook. She packed her bag and paused by the piano. One finger pressed a single key, C, bright and clean. The sound shivered the room and faded. See you at 7, she said and left. The next morning, she returned. The water was easier. The clip on his finger took less time. When she said, stand, he stood. 10 seconds. Then 11. Then 12. On the 3rd day, she added, open the window for 3 minutes. Fresh air only. We'll close it after. He raised an eyebrow. You live on rules. I live on habits, she corrected. Habits decide what we become. They stood by the open window. Cool air moved through the hall, stirring the curtains and bringing a faint, green smell from the unkept garden. Richard's shoulders dropped, as if the air itself had weight he recognized. Close it, she said gently at 3 minutes, and he did. On the 4th day, she placed a metronome on the piano, wound it, and let it click, a soft, steady sound. Breathe with it, she said. In for 2, out for 2. Like waves. He didn't say yes. He also didn't say no. He watched the little arm swing back and forth, and after a moment, his chest rose and fell in time. On the 5th day, he tested her. How much will it take to make you stop coming here? He asked, eyes cold again. Name a number. Emily looked almost amused. Pay me with effort. It's the only currency I accept. You said that before. And it's still true. He tried silence next. She outlasted it. He tried sarcasm. She let it pass like wind around a rock. He waited for anger, but she never raised her voice. When he coughed hard and turned away, embarrassed by his weakness, she didn't look away, and she didn't pity him. She simply handed him a tissue and wrote a note. By the 2nd week, the house had changed in small, honest ways. The curtains opened each morning. The ash in the fireplace was swept. The glass of wine that once waited by evening was replaced with a cup of warm tea. He said he hated the tea. He drank it anyway. Emily adjusted the plan a little every day. 2 more seconds of standing. 3 slow steps to the window. 4 breaths with the metronome. Always small. Always clear. Why so little? He asked one morning, irritated by the tiny goals. Because you've been carrying a mountain, she said. We don't drop it by running. We set down 1 stone at a time. He didn't reply, but he looked at her longer than before. The storm came on a Friday night. Rain clawed at the windows. Wind pressed against the glass like a tired hand. Thunder rolled low and far away. Richard could not rest. He rose from his chair and stared at the piano in the dim light. His chest felt tight, not pain exactly, but pressure, as if the room had shrunk around him. He took a step toward the stairs, then another. His breath caught. The 3rd step slipped away from him. His vision thinned at the edges. He reached for the rail and missed. His knees hit the carpet. The world tilted. James, he tried to call, but it was only air. His cheek touched the floor. He tasted dust. The wind moaned outside. The old clock ticked too loudly. Footsteps. James's voice, near and frightened. Sir. Sir. The room spun back into place in small pieces, like glass finding itself after breaking. A phone rang. A door opened. Rain and Night folded into the hall. Emily knelt beside him, rain on her hair, breath quick from running. Richard, can you hear me? He blinked. Her face steadied above him, focused, unafraid. Don't speak, she said, sliding the oximeter on his finger with practiced speed. She counted his pulse, watched his chest, listened. James, 2 pillows behind his back.
Slowly. Good.
Richard, eyes on me. He tried to look away. Her voice held him. Breathe with me, she said, setting the metronome on the floor and starting the small swing. In for 2. Out for 2. That's it. Again.
Air scraped in, then out.
His hands shook. His heart hammered like a fist on a door. You're not dying, she said in a firm, even tone. You fainted. Your pressure dipped, and your fear did the rest. Stay with me. A minute passed.
2.
The numbers on the little screen crawled upward. Color crept back into his face. The room widened. The clock calmed down. He swallowed hard. A single word escaped him, soft, broken.
Margaret.
Emily's eyes softened, but her hands stayed steady.
I know, she said.
Stay here. You're safe. When his breathing steadied, she lifted her gaze to James. Warm blanket. No talking. Turn the lights down. She sat cross-legged on the floor beside him, back straight, one hand near his shoulder but not on it. You're going to feel wrung out for an hour, she said. That's normal. We'll hydrate, then we'll rest. Tomorrow, we reset. Richard stared at the ceiling. The storm quieted as if listening. After a while, he said, barely above a whisper, I thought I was ready to go. You were ready to stop hurting, she corrected. Those are different. Silence filled the space between them, not empty this time, but warm. Finally, he turned his head toward her. What happens now? Now, Emily said, calm and clear, you agree to a real plan. No drama. No grand promises. Just steady care, medicine, food, movement, sleep. I'll manage the steps. You give consent and show up. And if I fail? You won't fail, she said. You'll have hard days and better days. I'll be here for both. He closed his eyes, thinking of the piano keys she had touched, the window she had opened, the metronome's patient swing. When he opened them again, they were wet. Fine, he breathed. Write the plan. Emily pulled her notebook from her bag and, sitting on the floor, outlined the simplest path forward. Morning hydration, midday nutrition, evening breathing practice. Light walks down the hall, a short list of medications to begin tomorrow. Clear boxes. Clear times. No tricks. She slid the page toward him.
Read.
Ask questions. Sign if you agree. He read every line. His hand trembled as he signed. When he finished, he set the pen down and looked at her. Will you be here tomorrow? He asked. At 7, she said. He nodded once. Then I'll be ready. Emily stood, signaled to James, and they helped Richard to the chair. The room was quiet except for the soft click of the metronome. She gathered her things. At the door, she paused and glanced back. Good night, Richard. He held her gaze. Good night, Doctor. When the door closed and the rain gentled to a whisper, Richard Coleman sat very still, the sign plan on his table and the metronome ticking like a small, steady heart. For the first time in years, the night did not feel endless. It felt like a bridge to morning. Morning came softly, like the house was learning how to breathe again. At exactly 7, the bell rang. James opened the door and Dr. Emily Carter stepped in, hair tied back, notebook under her arm, calm as a metronome. Good morning, Richard, she said as she entered the living room. He was already sitting up, the sign plan on the table beside him. He tapped the paper once with his finger. I remember, he said. Good, Emily replied. We start simple, we stay simple, and we keep going. She checked his pulse and oxygen, then lifted her eyes. Numbers are a little better than last night. That's a good sign. James brought a tall glass of water with a slice of lemon. Richard drank half without being told. He didn't make a show of it, but Emily noticed. Box 1, she said, making a neat tick in her notebook. Hydration. They moved to breakfast. The plate was plain. Oatmeal with berries, scrambled eggs, a few slices of apple. Richard looked at it with a raised eyebrow. No sugar, no wine, no fun, he said. Emily gave the faintest smile. Your heart has had its share of drama. It needs ordinary days. He ate, slowly. When he paused, she waited. When he resumed, she nodded and recorded the time. After breakfast came the hallway walk. The first day's goal: reach the window at the end of the hall and back, no more. Small steps. Eyes forward, Emily said. The wooden floor creaked softly under his weight. He kept one hand on the wall, the other close to his side. At the 10th step, he wanted to stop. At the 12th, he almost did. Emily didn't touch him. She walked beside him, counting his breaths. 4 in, 4 out.
Good.
Keep going. They reached the window. Outside, the garden looked tired, but not hopeless. Old rose bushes leaned toward the light, waiting. Richard stood there, breathing, while the cool air tapped the glass. Back we go, Emily said gently. They returned to the chair. He lowered himself into it with careful pride. She checked his pulse again. You did well, she said. That's box 3. What was box 2, he asked. Breakfast. The body is a clock. We're winding it. He said nothing, but his shoulders eased. The week unfolded like a quiet ladder. On day 2, the walk took 1 minute less. On day 3, he opened the window himself. On day 4, she added a short rest on the terrace. 3 minutes of sunlight, eyes closed, breathing slow. On day 5, she brought a small timer and set it on the table. When this rings, you take your medicine, she said. I want to hear it from the kitchen. He stared at the pill organizer, neat and clear. I don't like the idea of needing these. You're not weak for needing help, Emily said. You're wise for taking it. He took the tablets with water. When the timer chimed again an hour later, this time for breathing practice, he rolled his eyes and did that, too. Box 4. Emily said softly, checking it off. By the second week, the house had changed. Curtains opened early. The fireplace stayed clean. A bowl of fresh fruit stood where the wine used to be. James moved through the rooms with quiet energy, polishing frames and clearing dust from the piano lid. He did it without being asked. He did it because the house felt alive again. On Wednesday, Emily wiped a clean square on the piano with a soft cloth and placed the metronome there. We're not playing, she said, seeing the way Richard's eyes tightened. We're breathing near it. That's all. She set the metronome to a slow click. They sat, side by side, and breathed with the swing of the small arm. After a minute, Richard spoke, voice low. She used to play every Sunday evening, he said. Dinner first. Then the piano. She would say, if we end the week with music, the week won't end us. Emily listened. What did she play? Sometimes the same piece over and over until she forgot the world, he answered. Sometimes nothing at all. Just quiet. Her hands on the keys like prayer. He turned his face away, but he didn't stop talking. The words came like rain finding a path. I couldn't go near this room after she died, he said. When I tried, the silence was louder than any sound. Emily kept her voice steady. You came near it today. That's not nothing. He nodded once. His eyes shone, but he didn't break. There were hard days, too. One morning, he refused the walk. Not today, he said, jaw set. I'm tired. Emily sat opposite him and opened the plan to the day's boxes. Then I refused, and we try again tomorrow. But the body learns from what we repeat, both action and avoidance. He looked at the neat boxes at the space where a check mark would go. After a long minute, he stood. 2 steps, he said. Don't clap. I don't clap, Emily said. I record. He took the steps. At the window, he rested his forehead against the cool glass and closed his eyes. It wasn't victory. It was work. That counted more. Another afternoon, he woke from a nap angry and ashamed after a nightmare. He snapped at James and told Emily to leave. She rose without argument, put on her coat, and walked to the door. With her hand on the handle, she said, "I'll be back at 7." The quiet after she left felt heavy. 10 minutes later, Richard called James and asked him to bring the plan. He checked the boxes he could complete alone. Water, fruit, slow breathing. He did them one by one. When Emily returned the next morning, the boxes were marked in his uneven, stubborn handwriting. She looked at the page, then at him. "That was good," she said simply. He held her gaze. "I'm not a child." "I didn't say you were," she replied. "I said it was good." The garden became part of the routine. Emily set a new task: choose one thing to tend. Only one. Richard walked the path slowly, passing overgrown lavender and roses with fading color. He stopped at a small, crooked bush near the fence. It leaned hard to one side, as if listening for someone who never came. "That one," he said. They pruned gently. James brought fresh soil. They watered the roots and tied a soft cloth to support the stem. The work was quiet, honest, and small. When they finished, the plant still looked humble, but less alone. "Every morning, 1 cup of water," Emily said. "For the rose and for you." "What does that even mean?" he asked. "Consistency," she said. "It's how life returns." He grunted, but the next day, he watered the rose without being told. By the weekend, a single new bud showed like a promise. On Sunday afternoon, Emily brought a thin, blank notebook. "What now?" Richard asked. "Homework." "A letter," Emily said. "Write to Margaret. Not to be sent, not to be read by anyone. Just write what you would say if she sat beside you for 5 minutes." He stared at the cover. "I don't write letters." "You speak," she said. "Let your hand keep up." He resisted for an hour. Then he opened the book. The first words came slow and heavy. After the 4th line, they came faster. He wrote until his hand cramped, then wrote a little more. When he finished, he closed the notebook and rested his palm on it like a shield. "Do I show you?" he asked. "No," Emily said. "You already showed me by writing it." He set the notebook in the drawer beside the piano, as if placing something valuable back where it belonged. That evening, Emily stood before the piano again. She didn't ask permission. She simply pressed one key, then another, not a song, just 2 notes that belonged together. Richard did not move. She stepped back. "Your turn," she said. 2 notes. "Any 2. He stared at the keys like they were a cliff. His hand hovered, then lowered. He touched one, then another, soft, careful, almost shy. The sound hung in the air, simple and true. His chest lifted. He looked at Emily, surprised by his own breath. "Good," she said, voice warm but even. "We'll do that once a day. 2 notes. When you're ready, 3. "Will it stop hurting?" he asked. "No," she said. "But it will hurt less loudly." He nodded. It was enough. By the end of the month, the plan had more checks than empty spaces. He could walk the hall and the terrace without stopping. He could stand at the window and count 20 steady breaths. He took his medicine when the timer sang. He watered the rose. He pressed 3 notes on the piano, and on one brave day, 4. His face changed in small ways. The gray at the edges of his skin softened. The tired fold beneath his eyes lifted. He still had hard nights, but morning no longer felt like a punishment. One afternoon, after the breathing practice, he said, "Stay for tea." Emily hesitated, then sat. James brought a tray and left them in gentle peace. They didn't talk about illness. They didn't talk about death. They spoke about the city lights, and the way the terrace smelled after rain, and how the house sounded different when the curtains were open. When she rose to leave, Richard stood, not because the plan said so, but because it felt right. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" she asked. "For showing up," he answered. "Every day." She met his eyes. "You're the one showing up, Richard. I'm only keeping time." He watched her go. The door closed softly. The house did not return to silence. It settled into a quieter music. He walked to the piano and pressed 3 notes, slow, clear, alive. Then he turned to the terrace, watered the rose, and stood in the last gold of the sun. The man who had once chosen to fade was now learning, hour by hour, how to return. And somewhere between the plan's neat boxes and the gentle swing of breath, he found the first honest word for what tomorrow might be. Possible. The weeks melted into months, and little by little, Richard Coleman was not the same man who once waited for death. His steps grew stronger, his breath steadier, and his eyes brighter. He had learned to stand not only on his legs but also on his will. Every morning at 7, Emily walked through the doors with her calm voice and sharp eyes. She didn't have to fight as hard anymore. Richard now met her halfway. The glass of water was already poured before she arrived. The piano lid was sometimes open. The rose outside had bloomed with a quiet strength that mirrored his own. One crisp autumn morning, Richard stood at the window in his robe, watching the sun spread gold across the city. He didn't wait for Emily to remind him. He reached for the glass of water, drank deeply, and whispered, "I want to live." Emily heard him from the doorway. She didn't interrupt. She let the words settle in the room like new air. That day, the plan changed. "Your body is stronger," Emily said, flipping open her notebook. "Now we must work on your future." "My future?" Richard frowned. "I barely managed today."
Exactly, she said.
"And today leads to tomorrow. So, what will you do with it?" He didn't answer at once. He looked at the piano, at the rose in the garden, at the empty chair where Margaret once sat. For the first time in years, the silence did not sting. It invited. "I'll start with one thing," he said at last. "I'll open the foundation again." Margaret dreamed of it: scholarships, hospitals, homes. "I closed it when she died." Emily nodded slowly. "That's not medicine, Richard. That's healing." The announcement shook the city. A press conference was held in the marble lobby of his tallest building. People gasped when they saw him walk in, not carried, not slouched, but standing, suit neat, shoulders straight. He wasn't the ghost they had whispered about. He was alive, breathing, present. "My wife once told me," Richard said into the microphones, "that wealth means nothing if it doesn't serve others. I lost sight of that when I lost her. But thanks to the persistence of one person who refused to let me go, I'm standing here today with a new purpose. The Coleman Foundation will return, stronger, wider, and open to anyone in need." The applause was thunderous. But in the crowd, his eyes searched until they found Emily, standing quietly at the edge. She didn't clap loudly, didn't seek attention. She only gave him a small, proud nod. That night, the house glowed with warm light. For the first time in years, music filled the walls. Richard sat at the piano. His fingers trembled, but they moved. Slowly, carefully, he played the song Margaret had once loved. Emily sat nearby, listening, her eyes soft but steady. When the last note faded, Richard closed his eyes. "I thought playing this would break me," he admitted, "but it feels like she's here. Not gone. Just part of me." "She is part of you," Emily said gently. "And she'd be proud." Richard turned to her, his voice low. "I used to believe death had the final word. But you proved me wrong. You didn't just heal my body, Emily. You gave me a reason to want tomorrow." For a long moment, silence lingered, gentle, alive, full of meaning. Then, with courage that surprised even him, Richard added softly, "And if tomorrow allows, I'd like you to be part of it." Emily's lips curved into a smile. "Then tomorrow is already worth it." Months later, the garden was alive again. Roses bloomed in waves of color. The crooked bush they had saved now stood straight, strong, and proud. Richard often walked the path, watering it himself, no longer as a patient, but as a man reborn. Children played in the new hospital wings his foundation had built. Families found shelter in homes he funded. He no longer hid from the world, he gave to it. Every evening, when the city lights sparkled outside his window, Richard sat by the piano. Sometimes he played 2 notes, sometimes an entire song. And always Emily was there, strict when she had to be, gentle when he needed it most. The billionaire who once said no to treatment now lived each day as a second chance. He was no longer the man waiting for an end. He was a man walking toward a beginning. And beside him, always on time, was the doctor who had risked everything, not just to save his life, but to remind him that life was still worth living. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you find this story worth watching. If you do, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories, like, and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thanks for watching.